Have you ever felt that strange sensation of being physically present in a conversation, in a meeting, at a family dinner, but your mind being completely absent? As if an essential part of you had simply disconnected, withdrawn to a quiet and distant place, observing everything from afar without really participating. Perhaps you've noticed this happening more frequently lately. You're there responding when necessary, smiling at the right moments, but something inside you has pulled away, like a tide that recedes without making noise, leaving only the surface visible while the depths move toward unknown territories. Today we're going to explore this phenomenon through the eyes of Albert Camus, who understood like few others this silent withdrawal of consciousness in the face of a world that seems to have lost its meaning. The withdrawal of consciousness doesn't happen overnight. It's a gradual, almost imperceptible process, like the changing of seasons or the aging of the face we see in the mirror every day. Camus observed that there exists a moment in many people's lives when they begin to question not just what they do, but why they do it. It's when the automatism of social routine begins to reveal its mechanical and empty nature. You wake up, have coffee, go to work, interact with colleagues, return home, watch television, sleep, and the next day everything repeats. But at some point in this repetition, an internal voice whispers a disturbing question. Why? Why are we doing this? What's the point of all this? And when this question doesn't find a satisfactory answer, when the silence that follows is deafening, consciousness begins its strategic withdrawal. This withdrawal is not cowardice, although it might seem so. It is, in fact, a form of soul self-preservation in the face of what Camus called the absurd. The absurd is not just the lack of meaning, but the painful confrontation between our human need to find significance and the apparent indifference of the universe in providing it. When we look at social structures, at institutions, at collective rituals that once gave us security and purpose, and see only empty constructions maintained by habit and convention, our consciousness does what any organism would do when faced with a hostile environment. It protects itself. It withdraws not from lack of courage, but from excess of lucidity. It's the recognition that fully participating in something we no longer believe in would be a form of violence against our own authenticity. Modern society, with its frenetic pace and constant demands for performance and productivity, creates an environment particularly conducive to this withdrawal of consciousness. We are bombarded daily with information, expectations, social obligations, pressures to fit into certain molds, to consume certain things, to think in certain ways. And at some point, the awakened consciousness realizes that much of what is presented to us as important or necessary is, in fact, artificial. The superficial conversations about weather, about celebrities, about products we should buy. The hierarchies based on titles and possessions more than on character or wisdom. The incessant search for external approval, for likes, for recognition from people we often don't even truly know. Faced with this perception, consciousness makes a choice. It withdraws, preserving its integrity in an internal space where it can still breathe. But this withdrawal brings with it a significant emotional price. The person who experiences this distancing frequently feels isolated, misunderstood, as if living behind glass that separates them from the rest of the world. There's a deep melancholy in observing social life as a spectator, in realizing that the people around you continue engaged in activities and conversations that have lost their flavor for you. It's like watching a play whose dialogues, blocking, and predictable endings you already know, but from which you can't leave because you haven't yet found a better place to go. This sensation of being disconnected can generate anxiety, because our human nature seeks connection and belonging, but at the same time, forcing yourself to participate in something that no longer resonates in your soul seems like a fundamental betrayal of yourself. Camus understood that this withdrawal is paradoxically both a problem and an opportunity. It's a problem because it distances us from the human community, of which we are an integral part, and which we need for our emotional and practical survival. But it's also an opportunity because it puts us in direct confrontation with our own existence, forcing us to question not just what we do, but who we are when we remove all social masks, all the roles we play, all the external expectations we carry. It's in this space of withdrawal that we can find our deepest authenticity, our inner voice that was silenced by the constant noise of the external world. It's where we can begin to build a more honest relationship with ourselves and, eventually, with others. The consciousness that withdraws is not fleeing from reality, it's seeking a more truthful reality. It distances itself from appearances, from conventions, from ready-made truths that society offers, to find its own truths, however uncomfortable or lonely they may be. It's an act of courage disguised as withdrawal, a movement toward authenticity that requires considerable inner strength, because it's much easier to go with the flow, accept ready-made answers, participate in social rituals without questioning them, than to face existential emptiness and the responsibility of creating meaning from nothing. Perhaps you recognize this experience in your own life. Perhaps you've noticed how certain activities that once gave you pleasure now seem mechanical and empty. How certain people with whom you used to converse for hours now seem to speak a language you no longer understand, not from lack of intelligence, but from lack of resonance. How certain objectives that once seemed important to you now reveal themselves as arbitrary and without substance. This perception can be frightening, but Camus teaches us that it is also liberating. It's the first step toward a more conscious and deliberate life. Leave a comment sharing. Have you ever felt your consciousness withdrawing from social situations that were once important to you? Write, "I feel this too," if this experience is part of your journey. Your response not only validates your own experience, but creates a connection with other people who are going through the same process of awakening. You are not alone in this journey of questioning and self-discovery, and sharing your experience can be the first step toward finding a new way of relating to the world. What's interesting is that this withdrawal of consciousness doesn't need to be permanent or total. Camus proposed that we can learn to navigate between engagement and detachment, between social participation and preservation of our authenticity. It's possible to be present in social situations while maintaining a part of us that observes and remains conscious, participating without completely losing ourselves in collective automatism. It's a delicate dance between belonging and individuality, between the need for human connection and the need for personal integrity. But to perform this dance, we first need to recognize and accept our withdrawal, understand its causes and purposes, instead of simply feeling guilty about it. Society often interprets this withdrawal as antisocial or problematic, but Camus saw in it a sign of mental and spiritual health. It's consciousness refusing to be anesthetized, to be reduced to a mere instrument of social conformity. It's the preservation of critical capacity, of sensitivity, of depth of thought in a world that frequently rewards superficiality and speed over reflection and authenticity. The person whose consciousness withdraws is, in many cases, simply more awake than those who continue automatically participating in social rituals without questioning them. But how then to live in this state of expanded consciousness without becoming a hermit? Camus suggested that the answer lies in creative revolt, in the capacity to create meaning and beauty even while recognizing the absurdity of existence. Instead of fleeing completely from society, we can choose specific forms of engagement that respect our authenticity. We can seek people and activities that nourish our soul instead of draining our energy. We can create spaces of genuine meaning within the apparent general meaninglessness. It's possible to participate selectively, consciously choosing where to invest our attention and energy, instead of simply going with the flow or withdrawing completely. This conscious choice requires a fundamental change in how we view our social responsibility. Instead of feeling obligated to participate in everything, to please everyone, to fit into all social expectations, we can take responsibility for our own authenticity and emotional well-being. This doesn't mean becoming selfish or insensitive to others, but it means recognizing that our first obligation is to our own integrity, and that from this solid foundation, we can offer the world a more genuine and valuable contribution. The withdrawal of consciousness is frequently accompanied by a greater sensitivity to hypocrisy, to falseness, to the emotional manipulation that permeates many social interactions. Conversations that once seemed normal now reveal their hidden agendas, their attempts to impress or manipulate. Relationships that once seemed solid show themselves to be based on convenience or habit more than on real affinity. Institutions that once inspired respect reveal their contradictions and limitations. This greater perception can be painful, but it's also a gift because it allows us to make more informed decisions about where and how to invest our emotional energy. The withdrawn consciousness develops a special capacity for silence and contemplation. In a world that constantly values speech, action, visible productivity, learning to value inner silence, quiet observation, deep reflection is almost a revolutionary act. It's in this silence that we can hear our own inner voice, which was often muffled by the noise of external expectations. It's in contemplation that we can process our experiences, integrate our perceptions, and gradually build a philosophy of life that is truly ours, not a modified version of what others expect from us. But it's important to recognize that this journey of withdrawal and rediscovery is neither linear nor easy. There are moments of clarity and moments of confusion, periods of inner peace and periods of existential anguish. There are days when chosen solitude seems liberating and days when it seems like a prison. There are moments when we feel brave for following our own path and moments when we feel lost and disconnected. This ambivalence is natural and human, and Camus would remind us that we don't need to completely resolve these contradictions to live a meaningful life. We can carry our doubts and uncertainties as traveling companions, not as burdens that prevent us from moving forward. If you're watching this channel, you're likely also at some point in this journey of questioning and rediscovery. Consider subscribing not to receive more information that already abounds in the world, but to be part of a community of people who value deep reflection, authenticity, and the courage to question established truths. Here you'll find a space where your sensitivity and depth are valued, where your existential doubts are understood as signs of an awakened consciousness, not as problems to be quickly solved. This is a gentle invitation to a shared journey of discovery, where each person is respected in their unique rhythm of understanding and growth. The withdrawal of consciousness can eventually transform into a more conscious and selective return to the social world. But this return happens on our own terms, with our own integrity intact, carrying with us the wisdom acquired in silence and contemplation. We don't return as before, automatically participating in everything presented to us, but we return as conscious observers who actively choose where and how to engage. We carry with us a certain inner freedom that allows us to be present without losing ourselves, to participate without compromising ourselves, to connect without completely fusing with others' expectations. This new way of being in the world may seem lonelier, but it's frequently richer in genuine connections. When we stop seeking universal approval and begin seeking authentic resonance, we attract people and experiences that truly nourish our soul. The quality of relationships improves even if the quantity decreases. Conversations become deeper, moments of connection more meaningful, experiences more intense because they are consciously chosen instead of simply passively accepted. Camus teaches us that absurd life is not a life without meaning, but a life where we are the ones who create meaning. The withdrawal of consciousness is often the first step in this conscious creation of sense, because it removes us from external sources of meaning that may not be genuine for us, creating space to discover what truly moves us, what we truly value, what we truly want to create and contribute to the world. It's a process of existential cleansing, removing what no longer serves to make room for what can truly flourish. In the end, the consciousness that withdraws from society without warning is following a deep instinct of self-preservation and authenticity. It recognizes that not all social participation is nourishing, that not all connection is genuine, that not all collective activity contributes to our growth and well-being. And in its silent withdrawal, it's creating the conditions for an eventual more conscious, more deliberate return, more aligned with our deepest values. It's a movement of death and rebirth, of dissolution and reconstruction, that may seem frightening but is fundamentally an act of self-love and existential wisdom. The consciousness that withdraws is not giving up on life, it's seeking a more authentic way to live it.